Hey there, it's Kat and this is Brews and Reviews. Too gay or not too gay? Today I'm going to be bringing you guys my March 2020 wrap up. So these are all the books that I read in March and I'm going to talk about them. I'm going to save the least popular opinion that I have until the last one. Because please don't hate me. Anyway, let's get on with it, shall we? So the first book that I read in March was Poison Study by Maria V. Schneider. So this book follows Yelena, who is a criminal who gets the opportunity to stave off her execution by becoming the commander of the land that she lives in, by becoming his food taster. So basically she ends up going through a lot of poison training. She also does a couple of other things, and there's some sneaky type magic things that are happening as well. And it was okay. Like, I feel like younger Kat would really have enjoyed this book. If I'd read it when I was like a teenager, I think I would have been so for this, and I would have been like, oh my god, this is a great series. But as an adult, like, there are things that I liked about it, and there are things that I'm like so many people wanted to either kill or rape the main character, and like, I don't understand. Why is she like a target? Is it just because she's the main character and plot? I don't know. But I just didn't really appreciate it. That was a weird thing. And I also found it a little bit weird. The main character does have PTSD, and it does like show up because she had something very traumatic happen to her. But then she doesn't really deal with it. Like, it seems like occasionally she'll be like flashes of it coming back to her, and then in situations where she would most definitely be experiencing that, she's like, I'm totally fine, I could go and fight this guy. And I'm like, oh no, I don't think that's how it works. I think you get to pick and choose due to the plot. I don't know. It was a bit weird. This was an okay book. It was just okay though. Next up I picked up Wildcard by Marie Lu, and this is the second book in the Warcross duology, and I didn't really like it that much. It was okay. Again, very middling, 3 stars. It was so different from the first book. Like, I really enjoyed the first book, and I think that's partly because I really enjoy competition books. I'm really drawn to them, and I really like different aspects of trying to achieve a goal. Yeah, this one was just a completely different book, and it just had completely different things going on, and I just didn't appreciate it. Maybe as well because I was going into it from having come from that book, which I really enjoyed that experience, and then I've come into this, and it's like, I also feel like this book really lacked character development, and it was like a bit disappointing. I'm not actually going to say what this book's about because the entire plot hinges on something that happens very near the end of the first book, and it's like a massive spoiler. So I'm just, you know, sequel to Warcross, but it's very different. Kind of reminded me of Inception at least at one point, but like a worse Inception. Yeah, I just didn't appreciate it as much as I thought I was going to. And I decided to do a reread, and I picked up The Novice by Trudy Carnarvon. So this book is the sequel to The Magician's Guild and the middle book in the Black Magician trilogy. It's basically a magic school kind of thing. So the main character from the last one spends a whole time in a magic school, and she deals with a shit ton of bullying, and like all the adults around her are terrible, terrible people. They just shouldn't be in charge of kids. Why are you teaching people if you act like that? So there's a lot of bullying in this if you don't like bullying. Like, if you can't stand reading about it, obviously no one likes bullying, but if you can't stand reading about it, then probably not the book for you. There's also a murder mystery plotline and another plotline where this one character is investigating some things, and there's a lot of like him discovering himself and his sexuality, which is, you know, sort of questioned in the first book, and then in this one it like comes to the fore. But yeah, this book I hadn't read for such a long time, and I was expecting to like it more than I did. I got really into it and I did like it, but like, oh my god, the adults, can you even call them adults with how they were reacting? They were all like sat in the staff room having a chat about, oh, there was like 10 of them bullying her, and I'm like, yes, stop it, you crazy people. But yeah, I ended up giving this one a 4 stars, and it was mostly because of my nostalgia. I think if I had read it now for the first time, I probably would have given it 3 stars. So next up I decided to read one of the audiobooks that you guys set for me to read. I'm going to talk about them all at the end of the video just because it's easier to talk about them in a whole. So if you're really interested in the audiobooks, that'll be the end of this video. Then a friend from work decided to lend me a book because we were talking about crime thrillers, and she was like, oh my god, you should read this one, and then I lent her Sleep by C.L. Taylor. She's still reading it. Now we're in quarantine. I'm never getting that book back. Anyway, so she lent me An Unwanted Guest by Sherry Lupina. It's sort of one of those, takes place in a B&B, someone gets murdered, they're all locked in because of the snow around it, no one can get out, and then other people start to die as well. Like, I found it interesting, but it was very shallow. Like, a lot of the characters were quite one-dimensional. I feel like I looked at this book as like an entertaining read, rather than anything that is like gonna particularly grip me. It's probably not a book that's gonna stay with me for very long. So then I was in the mood to pick up something quick and easy, and I picked up One Punch Man Volume 11, and this was not my favourite. I think this is the least favourite volume that I've read of it so far. It was still good, and I liked the bits that followed Metal Bat and his sister, because his sister's cute and the way that he treats his sister is cute. There's very little of Saitama actually doing anything hero-y, and it's almost like this was a setup for more things to happen rather than anything actually happening, so it felt like a filler to me. So it was a bit disappointing, but still enjoyable. I ended up on a 3 stars for this one. So next up we have a buddy read that I did with Kayla from Crack Into a Good Book. We read Weeping Wolf by J.P. Harker. We actually did a buddy read of Wildcat, which is the first book in this series, and the author kindly sent us a copy of the sequel so we can continue our buddy read, and you know what? This is a book that sort of stuck with me. Like, the first book, I had some problems with it, but overall and by the end I really enjoyed it, and then I just kept thinking about it, and then me and Kayla kept talking about it, and we were like, I just really want to know what happens next. And this book did not disappoint. Honestly, I think this book is better than the first book. The problems I had with the first book, which were mainly to do with pacing, gone in this one. It's very fast paced and it keeps going, and everything that's happening is interesting and thrilling. The plot of this one is mainly dealing with the fallout of the last book. It focuses more on the Lurians, who are like the sort of Celtish type people, and how they're dealing with the structure of their new society and the formation of the new bonds that they've had to build at the end of the last book. Also, the main character of this one is a grumpy old man, and anyone who has ever seen me read any book knows that I love me some grumpy old man, and I was doomed to like the old man character, wasn't I? It's just my thing. I like a grumpy old man. This was very focused on like political structure, and it also had quite a focus on the Caledon's warriors, who are the Gadarim, and they are very interesting. For some reason I'm just totally drawn to them. They were people who deeply believe in honor, and they're slightly linked to magic, and I'm just so intrigued, and I just want to know more about it. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one, and I can't wait to read the next one. I'm definitely going to be reading Lion Cub, because like, I'm so invested now that like, you couldn't stop me. See, that's it. I talked about a good book, and now I have to talk about 2 shit ones. So, I don't know what possessed me to do this, but I picked up some daily deals on my Kindle. I was like, I want to read something on my Kindle, and then I just picked these things up, and it was a terrible idea. It was so bad. Such a bad time. So the first book I read was Violent Desires. Don't remember who that was by. Basically, a woman who works for an escort company has been hired to be kidnapped by a guy for 30 days, and she'll have to do whatever he wants, and blah blah blah, and she's like, oh, this is secretly really hot. And circumstances conspire that a random guy was in the mood for kidnapping, like a real life kidnapper, and he happened to kidnap this lady. Not the guy who hired the woman, another guy. So it's like the weirdest meet cute ever, and they're all horrible people. Like, half the book is her not realising that she's actually in potential danger because she's been kidnapped by a real man. It was supposed to be like a sexy book, but like at one point, after she's considered stabbing him with a dinner knife, he picks her up and then she bites him on the shoulder, and then he accidentally throws her down a flight of stairs. And then he's like, oh no, I'm really worried about you, and she's like, oh, isn't this sweet? Anyway, so yeah, there was some questionable things, and everyone was happily ever after by the end of it, so I don't know what's wrong with people. Anyway, so the next book that I read was called His Captive Human, and I picked it up because I weirdly had the second one and it sounded more interesting, but I was like, I can't read the second one, that's stupid, so I picked up the first one so I could get some backstory and see how the story started, and it was only 87 pages, like the most boring 87 pages of my life. Basically, somebody's planet got destroyed, and these, like, big alien hulky monster men were like, I don't know, we've got no ladies to rebuild with. What are we gonna do? And then Earth was like, here, have some of ours. But they didn't tell the ladies about it, so they just shipped them off. And then she had sex with him a lot and did some interior design on the spaceship. But anyway, he had like multi-penises. I don't know, it was weird and it was boring. I couldn't tell you one of their names, I couldn't tell you what happened, except they had lots of sex and it was super boring. Right, on to the next one. So I'm actually reading this book for a project that I'm doing, so I'm not going to actually say very much about it because you will hear my thoughts in the project that is coming up soon. So the book is Can You Keep a Secret by Sophie Kinsella. This book was a bit weird. I'm not going to tell you what I thought about it, but the premise of it is a woman has a really bad day, gets drunk, goes on a plane from Glasgow to London, they have turbulence, so she starts telling all her secrets to the guy that sat next to her on the plane, and then he turns out to be the CEO of her company. So they meet on like the day after. So awkward things ensue. And then the last book I want to talk about before we get into the audiobooks that you guys picked for me is East of West Volume 2. I have been dying to pick this up for ages, and finally I have, and I read it in pretty much one sitting and I fucking loved it. It's so fucking cool. Like, how did I forget how cool this was? Death, the other horseman of the apocalypse. Death has a robot horse. He has some Native American friends that go around with him. One could turn into a wolf and one could turn into a crow, and they're fucking awesome. And like, there's like an oracle with snaky eyes, and it's just so cool. Like, every single page on here, and I'm like turning it and I'm like, because I really, really like the artwork as well, and I realised that not much sense is coming out of me while I'm talking about this, but it's just so cool. So cool. It's alternate reality, fantasy, sci-fi, and just awesome. So awesome. So awesome. I don't think I actually said very much about that then, but it's fucking awesome. So just, if you take one recommendation from this video, take that one, because it was really good. So now we're on to the audiobooks that you guys picked for me to read throughout March. So the first one that I picked up was Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. Oh my god, I'm not winking at you guys, I promise. There's like a hair in my eye. Oh no. Okay, that's better. I'm not gonna creepily wink at you anymore. Nobody needed that ever. Anyway, the first one that I picked up was Elantris by Brandon Sanderson, and honestly I didn't really know what to think of this at the start because I found it quite slow. Like, the pacing of it was a little bit, I don't know, I find this with Brandon Sanderson sometimes, is that he takes his time with some stuff, and I'm not saying that that's a problem, it's just quite slow when you start off. And then it just got really good, and I was so invested in every plot line that was going on. I really liked the mystery of the Elantrians and what was actually happening to them. Also, just the Elantrians, I'm not going to spoil what I really love about them, but like what happens to them and how they continue is very interesting. I think there's a lot of politicalness to be found in this book, and it's a very interesting magic system. Not quite Mistborn levels of interesting magic system, but I really did enjoy the magic. Yeah, that's pretty much all I've got to say about it. I really enjoyed that one. It was very good. I'm very glad you guys finally pushed me to read that, because that's probably one of the oldest audiobooks I've had on my TBR. So next up I picked up Lock-In by John Scalzi. This one, again, was one that I've had on my TBR for so long, and I'm so glad you guys pushed me to it, because I don't know what I expected when I picked it up, but I really enjoyed how it was a mix of sci-fi and sort of a procedural crime thriller a bit. Like, there was a whole lot of different things going on, but I really liked how the elements combined. I feel like this one had a really compelling story, and I feel like this had some really interesting discussions about disability, particularly that it's not like people who have a disability need fixing, because they don't. Like, I really enjoyed how that was portrayed and spoken about. Okay, so now we're on to the one that I was honestly the most nervous about, and that was Magician by Raymond E. Feist. This book's huge. It's been on my TBR for ages, and it is like high fantasy, and I was like, this is, I don't know how I'm gonna feel about this. What if I don't like it and then you all hate me? And I did like it. I actually gave it 4 stars in the end. Now, I did have some problems with it, and I honestly think it's to do with the time period that it was written in. It reminded me very much of Lord of the Rings. I had the same problem with The Sword of Shannara by Terry Brooks, although I think that one was worse because that was literally Lord of the Rings. This book at the beginning starts out extremely Lord of the Rings, and I was like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this. I'm not, not really for it, don't really care what happens to the characters. Then we moved into the second part of the book, when the main characters became adults. They moved into completely different circumstances, and I instantly found it more enjoyable. I feel like as soon as it moved away from like the a Lord of the Rings copycat thing, I was way more invested, and I cared about the world, and I cared about like the different societies and the magic system that we were building up. I was really into that, and I just wish it hadn't taken like half the book to get to that point. And also the battles by like the end of the book were way better than the battles at the beginning of the book. Again, maybe that was because I was more invested in actually what was happening at the end of the book. There was like a really unnecessary like ferret death at one point, but like, I mean, it was necessary plot-wise, but also I was like super sad about it, and for some reason after like 2 weeks I still remember the ferret death, so there's that. Anyway, I really enjoyed this book. Just wish that the first bit had been less Lord of the Ringsy, but I do think that's a product of the time that this was written in, and I feel like I can forgive it for that. Just, if you go into this book, be aware that for the first half of this book, it will be very reminiscent of Lord of the Rings. Okay, now we get to talk about my favourite book that you guys picked, and that was Nosferatu by Joe Hill. I really enjoyed this book, like, so much. I was so invested in it. I feel like this world was really dark and gritty, and it just felt like gross. Like, the way that the descriptions were phrased, and like the settings, and all of the things that happened to people, it just felt kind of icky. But like, that was the whole point, that it was like not a nice setting, and it just felt a bit dirty. There's such a creepy, eerie atmosphere, and like, Charlie Manx is the fucking worst. Book's about people who have abilities, and one of them is a guy that kidnaps children and takes them away to Christmas Land, and he's like a vampire, and he turns them into vampires, and it's creepy as fuck. Like, child abduction is creepy anyway, but like, Charlie Manx, really creepy. Christmas Land, really fucking creepy. I actually liked all of the main characters, like Vic, Lou, and Wayne. They were a family that you could get behind, and as you could sort of see people changing as the book progressed, it was really interesting to sort of follow their personalities, because you're still rooting for them and you're like, come on, come on. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I feel like there's some really fantastic imagery, and it's going to stick with me for a really long time. Okay, so now we're on to the last book of the month. The last book that you guys picked, and the last book that I read this month. And, okay, so this is an unpopular opinion, and I understand if you feel a different way about this book. This is just my opinion and all that. I know it's a very popular book, but, so Lady Midnight by Cassandra Clare. You guys picked that I listened to this one, and I have been listening to it. I have DNF'd this book at page 225, I think, so that's more than a quarter of the way through this book, and it's not an uninteresting book. I just don't care. I don't really know why. I am interested in like the murdery plot that's happening. I find that really interesting, but I'm just not here for the angst. Like, the Julie and Emma thing is like, I don't care, and then the Mark angst, and I just don't care. Like, I wish I did, but I don't, and like, I can't force myself to care, and I kept trying to listen to this. I just kept trying, and I was like, no, just keep going, because you might like it, and it feels like something that I really should like, but I'm just not there, I'm not invested in it, and I'm like, this is a 700-page book, the start of a 3-book series, and there's so many other things that I could be reading, and I should DNF it, and I think I resisted DNFing it for so long because it's a Cassandra Clare book, and everyone loves Cassandra Clare, and like, I wish I did, because I like the other books, but I just don't think I'm invested enough to go into a new series with it. There's something about it that just doesn't work with me, so I have DNF'd this book, and I don't intend to pick it back up. I'm going to return the audiobook that I've got of it, because I'm just not going to read it. I'm left wondering how I feel about Cassandra Clare's book in general. I don't know. This is a very strange situation. It wasn't that I hated it, I just couldn't connect to it, and it wasn't working for me. So I've put it down, and I'm not going to pick it back up. So it is. So those are the books that I read and DNF'd in March. And I hope you liked this video. If you did, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!